I used to think the worst part about long drives at night was staying awake. Now I know the real danger isn't falling asleep at the wheel. It's the places you stop when you're tired and desperate. This was last year, late November, cold and drizzling the whole night. I was coming back from a work conference 2 states over, driving straight through because I couldn't afford a hotel. By midnight, I was exhausted and needed to pee so badly I was shifting uncomfortably in my seat. There wasn't much around, just dark highway and endless woods, until I finally saw a sign for a rest area. The place looked normal when I pulled in. A few semis idling, a couple of cars with fogged-up windows, and the main building lit up with buzzing fluorescent lights. Inside was the usual: vending machines, a rack of brochures, 2 bathroom entrances. The air smelled damp, like wet concrete. I went straight into the women's room. It was empty except for one stall all the way at the end that was closed. I picked the 3rd stall, sat down, and immediately noticed the quiet. No flushing, no running water, no faint hum of someone on the other side. Just the steady drip from a leaking pipe and the occasional gust of wind rattling something outside. I tried to hurry, but halfway through, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The stall at the end wasn't actually closed all the way. I could see a sliver through the hinge side, and I could see an eye. Someone was standing there, pressed right up against the crack, watching. I froze. My brain scrambled, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was just a shadow, a trick of the light. But then I saw the eye blink. I forced myself to finish, keeping my breathing as steady as I could. My hands shook as I pulled up my jeans and reached for the stall lock. The second it clicked, the end stall creaked softly. Whoever was in there was shifting. I opened my stall slowly and stepped out, forcing myself not to look down the row. My gut screamed at me to just walk. But when I got to the sinks, I gave in and glanced. The last stall door was shut tight again. I washed my hands fast, barely drying them before hurrying out into the foyer. I was almost to the exit when I heard the bathroom door open behind me. Heavy footsteps echoed on the tile. I didn't turn around. I pushed outside, into the cold rain, my pulse in my ears. My car was parked close to the building. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there gripping the wheel. That's when I saw him. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothes, came out of the women's bathroom. Not the men's, the women's. He looked around the lot like he was scanning for something, then pulled his hood up and walked casually toward the vending machines. That was enough for me. I started the car and pulled out so fast I sprayed water from the puddles. I drove until I found a gas station 20 miles down the road. Bright lights, cameras, other people. Only then did I let myself breathe. Later, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The way he was just waiting in that stall, silent. The way he'd chosen the women's room. The way he didn't even try to use the men's afterward. He just came out like he'd been caught off guard. I looked up news reports in the days after, expecting to see something. An arrest, a missing person, anything. But nothing ever came up. That rest stop was just another anonymous dot on the highway map. I can tell you one thing, though. He wasn't there to use the bathroom. He was waiting for someone. And if I hadn't noticed that eye through the crack, if I'd taken a stall closer to him, if I'd hesitated even a minute longer, I don't think I'd have made it out of there. Now I plan every trip so I don't have to stop at night. If I can't hold it, I'll pull over on the side of the road before I ever step foot in a rest area bathroom again. I've been going to the same gym for a year now, and nothing about it ever made me feel unsafe until last month. I usually work out late, around 9:30 or 10 p.m., because it's quieter. Less people crowding the squat racks, less waiting for machines. The gym is open 24 hours, but by the time I'm finishing up, the place feels almost deserted. That night, I stayed longer than usual, pushing through a brutal leg day. By the time I finally racked the bar and sat catching my breath, I realized it was past 11:30. The gym was nearly empty. I grabbed my water bottle and towel, wiped down the bench, and started heading toward the locker room. That's when I noticed him. He'd been around earlier in the night. Tall, mid-30s, lean but not bulky, the type of guy who drifts from machine to machine without really working out. I'd clocked him in that unconscious way women always do. Is he staring? Is he getting too close? That kind of mental inventory you keep without realizing it. I'd seen him earlier near the treadmills, then later by the dumbbells. Now he was standing by the stretching area, just watching me. Not stretching, not scrolling his phone, just watching. I looked away fast, telling myself not to be paranoid. But when I pushed through the door into the women's locker room, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was going to follow me. The locker room was empty, silent, except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting a pale reflection on the white tile. I set my bag down on the bench and dug out my toiletries. I just wanted to pee, rinse off quick, and go home. As I was walking toward the bathroom stalls, the door creaked open. I froze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoing off the tile. Hello? My voice came out sharper than I meant. No answer. I turned. He was standing just inside the locker room door, the same guy from the floor. He wasn't supposed to be there. This was the women's locker room. What the hell are you doing in here? I snapped, hoping my voice would cover the panic rising in my throat. He smiled like I'd just asked him for the time. Just checking. Didn't think anyone was in here. Yeah, well, there is. You need to leave. Instead of leaving, he took a step forward, then another. His shoes squeaked against the wet tile, slow and deliberate. I backed toward the stalls. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. You work out late a lot, he said casually, like we were talking at the water fountain. I've seen you here. You're always pushing hard, staying longer than anyone else. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to sound steady. Get out, or I'm calling the front desk. He tilted his head like he was amused. Nobody's at the desk this late. It's just us. That was the moment I realized how bad this could get. I darted into the nearest stall and slammed the lock shut. My phone was in my bag, across the room. Stupid. I wanted to kick myself for not carrying it. The silence was suffocating. Then came the sound of footsteps again, slow, circling. His voice floated in. You don't have to be scared. I'm not gonna hurt you. Liar. The way he said it made my skin crawl. He stopped right outside my stall. I could see his shoes under the gap, worn sneakers, damp soles squeaking against the tile. He leaned close enough that I could hear his breathing. You're even prettier up close, he murmured. My throat tightened. I tried to steady my voice. Get the fuck away from me. He chuckled softly, like I'd told a joke. Then, horrifyingly, the stall door shuttered. He was testing the lock. Leave, I barked, louder this time. Another rattle. He was pressing harder now. The thin metal latch groaned. I scanned the stall desperately for anything I could use. Nothing but toilet paper and a plastic sanitary bin. My eyes shot to the floor, my gym water bottle. I grabbed it, gripping it like a weapon. The lock groaned again. Then his voice dropped lower, quieter, almost intimate. You shouldn't come here so late, nobody around to help you. Something in me snapped. I slammed the water bottle against the stall door, hard, the crack echoing like a gunshot. Get the fuck out, I screamed, my voice breaking. Silence. His shoes shifted, hesitating. Then, after a long, awful pause, I heard retreating footsteps. Slow at first, then quicker, fading toward the door. I didn't move. My whole body was shaking. I stayed locked in that stall for what felt like forever, listening, waiting to be sure he was really gone. When I finally crept out, the locker room was empty. The outer door swung shut slowly, like it had only recently been opened. I ran to my bag, grabbed my phone with trembling hands, and called 911. My voice was barely coherent as I told the dispatcher where I was. She kept me on the line until police showed up. By the time they got there, the guy was long gone. The officers were sympathetic, but blunt. The gym's security cameras didn't cover inside the locker rooms, only the entrances and hallways. They pulled the footage, and sure enough, it showed him slipping into the women's side at 11:45, then leaving 3 minutes later, hood pulled up, head down. No ID on file, no membership under his name. They figured he'd slipped in behind someone else or used a stolen guest pass. They never caught him. Now, every time I walk into that locker room, I feel my stomach knot. I shower at home, no matter how sweaty I am. I keep my phone in my pocket during workouts. And I don't go late anymore. Not ever. Because I know what he wanted. I know how close I was to finding out what would have happened if that flimsy stall lock had given way. And I know he's still out there. I was driving home from a friend's place late on a Friday night when I stopped at a rest area off the interstate. I almost didn't stop. My gas tank was still half full, and I hate pulling over at night. But I'd had 2 bottles of water and a coffee on the drive, and my bladder wasn't giving me a choice. The rest area was quiet when I pulled in. A couple of trucks idled off to the side, their headlights throwing faint beams into the drizzle. The main building was lit by buzzing fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. It wasn't one of those big travel centers with food courts and bustling families, just a bare-bones concrete structure with 2 bathrooms and a row of vending machines. I parked close to the building and walked in quickly, hugging my jacket tighter against the cold. The foyer smelled like wet asphalt. I pushed into the women's restroom and was relieved to see it empty. 6 stalls lined one wall, sinks and a mirror on the other. I picked the second stall, locked the door, and sat down. My relief was immediate, but it didn't last long. A sound broke the silence. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. They entered the women's bathroom. My stomach dropped. I froze, hoping maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just another woman coming in. But then the footsteps stopped directly outside my stall. A man's voice said, low and casual, "Hey there." I didn't respond. My mouth went dry. He chuckled under his breath and added, "No need to be shy. I saw you pull in." My hands trembled as I tried to finish quickly, every instinct screaming at me to stay silent. Maybe if I didn't respond, he'd leave. The stall door rattled as he pulled on it. The lock held, but my heart slammed so hard in my chest I thought he'd hear it. "Come on. Don't be like that," he said. "I just want to talk." I could hear his breathing now, too close, heavy. I forced myself to move, yanking my jeans up with shaking hands, praying the metal latch wouldn't snap. "Don't you think it's dangerous? A pretty girl like you all alone out here?" His voice had shifted, darker now. "Lucky I'm the one who followed you in, huh?" I wanted to vomit. My skin crawled hearing him say "followed you in." I stared at the stall walls, trapped, trying to think. If I opened the door, I'd be face to face with him. If I stayed, he wasn't going away. I pulled out my phone as quietly as I could. No service. Of course. The man sighed theatrically outside the door. "All right, if you're not going to come out, I'll wait. We've got time." I tried to steady my breathing. My only option was to make a run for it. I unlocked the stall in one sharp motion and shoved the door open as hard as I could. It smacked into him with a satisfying thud, and he grunted, stumbling back. I bolted out, sprinting for the exit. My shoes squeaked on the damp tile as his footsteps thundered behind me. I hit the push-bar door with my shoulder and burst into the night air. My car was only a few spaces away. I fumbled in my pocket, my keys catching on the lining. My hands felt like they were made of stone. Behind me, the bathroom door slammed open. "Get back here!" he shouted, voice echoing in the empty lot. I yanked the keys free, hit unlock, and dove into the driver's seat. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped them again, but I managed to jam the key into the ignition. In the rearview mirror, I saw him running toward me, one hand reaching out like he thought he could still grab me through the window. His face was twisted, flushed red with anger. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into drive. My tires screeched as I shot out of the parking lot, adrenaline coursing through me so hard my vision blurred. I didn't slow down for miles. When I finally pulled into a gas station in a small town, I parked under the brightest lights I could find. My whole body shook. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel so tightly. Inside the station, I told the clerk what had happened. He didn't seem surprised. Said that rest stop had a reputation, that things like that had happened before. He offered to call the sheriff, but the thought of sitting there retelling the story to strangers, alone in the middle of the night, made me want to crawl out of my skin. I just wanted to get home. I drove the rest of the way with my doors locked and my eyes flicking to the mirrors every 30 seconds, convinced I'd see headlights following me. I never did. That night changed the way I see places like that. It's easy to think of horror as something supernatural, something distant and unreal. But what happened in that bathroom was worse in its own way, because it was real and it was human. He was just a man, and he was waiting. Now, if I have to travel late, I plan every stop carefully. I only go to gas stations and truck stops with cameras, cashiers, and people around. I never stop at small, empty rest areas anymore. Because the truth is, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't hit him with the stall door fast enough, or if I'd frozen a little longer, or if I hadn't parked so close to the building. And I don't ever want to find out.